Hello and welcome back to the Quaran-Stream, the final one of term 2, and we have made it to the end of term 2. And in fact, coming up in a few weeks' time, it'll be a whole year since we started doing these Quaran-Streams. I don't think any of us thought we'd still be like this for the whole year, but we've hopefully shown we can adapt and put out some good stuff using StreamYard and creating a YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff, and podcast network and all that kind of things. So thank you as ever for checking this video out. If you do like the stuff you're watching, you can like the video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can go through all of the stuff that we've done recently. And yeah, as those who are Warwick students in the audience will know, obviously this time of year the exec turns over, and let's say with sport it hasn't quite panned out. We'll have a by-election to see who will come in and take over the head of raw sport position. I am sort of the Roberto Di Matteo at the moment, just steering the ship for now and seeing if anyone's going to take over at the end. But yeah, if you do fancy yourself a sports media host, if you do want to give this a go, and maybe you've attended some of these shows, maybe you've watched along with some of these shows and think, yeah, I can be that person who just sits in the room and asks the questions, and sort of guide the crazy discussions as we do. You can, send me a message on Facebook. Obviously, in the video description, there's the Raw Sport Facebook group should be there. The link to that to join that should be there, so you'll get all the info about how that's going, about how the by-election will be carried out and whatever when we have that information to give to you. So yeah, why not give that a go? And feel free to send me a message or something, and we'll have a chat about the role, because it's an exciting one. Euros obviously coming up this summer, the Olympics, it looks like that's definitely happening with the recent news that international visitors are not going to be able to go. There's a lot of exciting things, so feel free to give me a buzz. Otherwise, I am anticipating that I will still be in charge throughout Easter and maybe for the first few weeks of term 3. So not quite, not quite me parting ways yet as the host so far, but a few other things to plug. And actually, we'll start with congratulations, because one of our alumni, John Bennett, who works for BBC Sport, the BBC, and you may have heard him feature on our Raw at 50 sports podcast, which I believe if you go on mixcloud.com/raw at 50 or something along those lines, you'll find the sport podcast where we went through the history of the department. And John Bennett, who was on W963 Not Out, at least that's when the station was known as that, he recently won the Gold British Sports Journalism Award 2020 for Best Radio Audio Documentary. John co-produced it with Sam Sheringham, also at the BBC, and it was called Klopp's Journey, Black Forest Hills to Anfield Thrills, and that was for BBC Sport News. So we would love to congratulate John Bennett for winning that. It is a tremendous award that shows what you can use this department to go on to do as an alumni, because he is certainly carrying that flag. Well deserved, and as we let him know on Twitter, but again, congratulating him on winning the Best Radio Audio Documentary at the British Sports Journalism Awards for 2020. Other things to plug. We have an interview with Katie Smith that we did recently that, again, I implore you to check that out. We talked a lot about the importance of female sports journalists and having them in the room to sort of change the sort of past narratives about females in sport. And we talked a lot about student radio as well, and what it's like to have a producer versus, student radio producing just means doing the stabs and all that kind of stuff. And we also we just talked a whole lot of interesting things I think you'd really should check out. And that's on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and the podcast feed as well. For Formula One fans, the Fantasy League, you are still welcome to join. Obviously, preseason testing's done, so you have all sort of the data that you need to know, the data rather. You have all that to go through. You can pick your team of drivers now. You have obviously until I think Saturday, because qualifying counts in the actual fantasy game. So you have till Saturday. We're co-running with Ball Sports. And yeah, if you're a fan of fantasy sports, or if you're a casual fan of F1, feel free to join. It should be a lot of fun. And with F1, we're going to have a season preview show coming up as well. We're recording this now on a Sunday afternoon. So I'm hoping to get it out by Thursday. We will have a season preview show going through the 10 teams, the drivers, the tracks, the design, the car designs, deliveries, if you like them, love them, hate them, all that kind of stuff. So do check that out, and because that's going to be a lot of fun to record, certainly, and hopefully it'll come across when watching it. So yeah, a lot of things there to plug. Apologies for that. Apologies, and thank you for my panelists for being so patient. I will now bring them all on. So with that, for the final Quaran-Stream of the term, we'll bring on, and I love to reference this because it is very much on brand for him, the team principal for Scuderia Spagnoli in the F1 Fantasy League. That is Joe Spagnoli. Joe, how are you?
I'm good. I was slightly perturbed by your comment that you were the Roberto Di Matteo of Raw Sport. If we're talking about Chelsea interims, Josh, I feel like you're more of a Rafa Benitez than him.
Well, Di Matteo went on to win the Champions League, right? So that's why I picked him.
The worst manager ever to win the Champions League.
I don't think, Benitez got booed by his own fans. I don't think any Raw Sport fans are booing me yet. Or maybe they are. I have no idea, to be fair.
To be fair, that's Chelsea fans, so ignore them.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, there was a very interesting interview Abramovich gave to Forbes about his philosophy for managers and, how the hiring and firing strategy. So that was, so I'm not, by no means am I plugging Roman Abramovich, but that interview was quite interesting. Let's bring on our deputy, of course, Ben Parkinson as well. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Josh. Hi, Joe. A lot to talk about, a lot of games I missed last week, so a lot to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of things to cover. Not much on the domestic end, too much, but obviously a lot on the European end as well. The Ball Sport editor, I say sports editor, now past sports editor, or one day, I mean, just gone previous sport editor, Luke James is with us. Luke, how's it feel to have sort of now relinquished that role?
Really good and really bad at the same time. I'm looking at things on social media and I'm thinking I wouldn't have put a comma there and I would have used a different image, but now I just need to let go because I appreciate that I was absolutely obsessed with the ball. So yeah, this is a transitional moment for me where I'm trying to just pass it on and let it be and focus on my dissertation rather than the student newspaper is basically the aim of the game from this point onwards.
Yeah. It's a bit of a bumping back down to reality. It's not a fun thing when that becomes your only focus. Let's see. We also have we've two returning guests. One who has been busy behind the scenes at Raw, and certainly yesterday had a lot to celebrate. Carl Henningway joins us. Carl, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm doing all good. I'm really happy to be back on the stream. Although my area of specialty is domestic, and given that there's absolutely nothing going on, well, very little, not nothing going on right now, I'm feeling a bit out of my depth, but I'm looking forward to giving it a try.
No, I think and we all know you support Brighton. I think there's a lot of, while it wasn't too much going on domestic, there's a lot of meaningful things going on, no matter how little they are. So, and yesterday's win, we'll talk about it, but that was a big one for your team, the Seagulls. And finally, coming to us from, I say bright sunny Spain. I'm hoping it's bright sunny Spain for his sake. Returning to the Quaran-Stream for the first time in months, probably. Dan Rauf is with us. Dan, how are you?
Hi guys, I'm very good. Thank you for asking. Bright sunny Spain at the moment. But yeah, it's. I thought it was about time to get back on the stream. And, to get back chatting about the thing that I love most, which is football.
Yeah, and you've picked when Man United have appeared City's closest challenger to return, it appears strategic, but I don't blame you, to be fair. Poor Ben's had to go through the first half of the season when he got spanked by Tottenham and all that kind of stuff. So
I was in hiding for that part, yeah.
Fair enough. I don't blame you for that. But we will get to United and their exploits in both the FA Cup and Europa League in a bit. But we will start with the Champions League of midweek. Let's see. We'll get the results up of the second legs, respectively. Nothing too surprising, I would say. Real Madrid got past Atalanta, a game I thought maybe Atalanta would give them problems. In the end, it was pretty straightforward for Real Madrid. Manchester City beat Gladbach 2-0. Obviously had a 2-0 lead heading into that game, so pretty straightforward. Luke, I'll come to you first because I know you watched this game. I guess, this was, Man City, granted, have so much luxury in being able to rotate their team, and I guess the rest for some of those players like Ilkay Gundogan kind of paid off because they were just dominant throughout that match, I'd say.
Yeah, it was a really, really simple game for City. They controlled throughout, and this was reflected in the post-match comments as well. Basically, City controlled the first half, had a number of chances, scored a couple, and then after half-time, the tie in the game was already won. So I think the only way to look at this fixture is in terms of kind of a more long-term perspective. It's just a case of saying, this is a game checked off the list for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. We can go into the next round and see where it takes us. But in terms of the game itself, it wasn't the most entertaining because I think it was already pretty much a foregone conclusion, but there were some really interesting looks in it. I think kind of Phil Foden in particular played really well in central midfield when he was on the pitch. So I think just pretty much what we come to expect from Manchester City these days in Europe.
Yeah. I feel like, Man City, again, as we sort of alluded to, they didn't need too much a push, I guess, to play and win this game as opposed to Gladbach, who have been struggling of late. We're recording this on Sunday. They did get a win on Saturday, albeit against Schalke, and my goodness, Schalke, terrible. Pretty straightforward for City. And as you said, Phil Foden, obviously, a team that, seemed to be gaining players with Aguero and stuff, his chances no harm. Not much to say about that one, I think. Moving on to the Wednesday games, Bayern Lazio. Joe, you had an eye on this game. Again, the first leg sort of did the damage for Bayern, but they just continued rolling on Wednesday in the return fixture.
Yeah, it felt like going into this game, it was already far gone. I'm not going to lie. The only reason I watched it and the only reason I had any interest in it was just to have a laugh at Lazio's expense, not having a great season in the league, and they've been pretty embarrassing in both ties against Bayern. I think they acquitted themselves relatively well. However, the salient point coming out of it is that something we've already known for about 5 years, which is that Robert Lewandowski is unquestionably the best centre-forward in all of football right now. Even more so against Stuttgart yesterday, actually. Stuttgart had a man advantage very early on in the game. Bayern had one sent off, and then immediately afterwards scored 3 goals. Lewandowski went on to go and get a hat-trick. That is not what's supposed to happen when you go down to 10 men. And Bayern versus PSG, there's an argument to say that this is a final coming too soon. I think Bayern are still favourites going into that. But look, they've drawn difficult teams, but I still think Bayern could well go all the way, even with a potential run-in against Man City in the semi-finals.
Yeah, and it's again with this game there wasn't too much to comment. I think Lazio obviously were outgunned pretty much and did get that goal. Did break the clean sheet, I guess. Parolo I think scored, but Bayern were too strong there. And then finally, I guess the game that I guess drew the most interest, certainly in the UK and certainly just from a competitive standpoint, Chelsea Atletico. Ben, you watched this game, and it was very interesting. Obviously, Simeone is sort of quite defensive, and Tuchel has shown he's been strong defensively. So it was interesting to see how both teams sort of approached this game, sort of a must-win game. And in the end, it was just a very good Chelsea performance in Europe, underlying that they are potentially a dark horse to win the whole thing.
Yeah, it was definitely the takeaway from the game was that Atletico Madrid were intensely disappointing. I think, a lot of people, including myself, actually backed them potentially win this year. There was, sort of a lot of giants like Liverpool, Real Madrid, maybe not really too threatening in the Champions League. And you thought Atletico, yeah, maybe this is their year. They look strong. They got a good balance to their squad. They could go far, but it was a really poor performance. I mean, some of the football, I couldn't believe what I was watching. The passes were, or I've not watched a game of football with that amount of stray passes. It looked really poor quality from their point of view. Chelsea got the job done. I think, obviously we spoke about this before, but the most kind of, best thing that Tuchel's done since he's come in has really been improving that defence, which if you look at that defence under Frank Lampard, I mean, it's outstanding, the job that he's done there. And that's the thing with Chelsea, like you said there, Josh, why they look like a dark horse. It's that defence. They just don't look like they're going to concede a goal, which is absolutely fantastic for all Chelsea fans and really positive. They do look like a bit of a threat because of that as well. I think, they've got Porto. That's obviously going to be a bit of a tough. Porto did well against Juventus, so not the easiest fixture. But again, Chelsea just don't look like conceding a goal. So I think they could definitely progress to the latter stage of the competition. Could surprisingly win it. I don't think they will. I don't think he's been there enough time, and I don't think he's been able to embed his ideas. But defensively, I think Tuchel deserves so much praise there. But really, the main thing I took away from that game is Atletico really poor, really poor.
Yeah, and Dan, I did want to ask you, because we haven't obviously caught up in a while, and since we last spoke to you, Lampard was there and then sort of been taken out, and Tuchel's come in, and obviously Chelsea under Lampard, I would say amongst opposition fans, there was a sort of a fact that you could get them, like they were certainly not convincing, and now, as a United fan, you obviously look at what Tuchel's done at Chelsea and you're a bit more fearful. What have you made of Chelsea recently?
I'd probably say they're the second best team in the league, to be honest. I'd say City are the best team by far. But then it comes to Chelsea. Then I'd say, yeah, definitely Chelsea. I wouldn't say they were awful under Frank Lampard, to be honest. They were just getting unlucky. Some games just weren't going their way. But under Tuchel, they've really hit a new level. And I'd say, yeah, definitely they're dark horses for the Champions League if they can get past Porto, which are probably the easiest team to face in the last 8.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's always sort of fated that Man City get the sort of easier path in the Champions League, but this time Chelsea got Porto, who, I mean, by no means are they, an easy team to defeat, obviously having knocked out Juventus. So that should be an interesting time. We'll get to the quarterfinals in a sec, but obviously, I mean, overall, Luke, it was a week where I guess because 3 of these ties had been essentially decided by the first leg, or at least 2 of them had. It was essentially sort of a bit of a formality compared to the week before, where we actually saw teams have to find themselves in a position where they had to go for it per se.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't a week where much eventful happened. Reflecting on how kind of quickly we've got through these games, I think when you look at it on a different way, I think it's quite easy to see that the outcomes were fairly predictable. I don't think anyone saw, apart from the Chelsea versus Atletico game, much of a reason to kind of expect any surprises this time out. So yeah, I think a fairly run-of-the-mill week, and that's not something you often see in kind of the last kind of 16 of the Champions League. So yeah, it was a little bit quieter than usual, but still some decent games on show. I mean, there are players who played this week who are, of course, people to watch out for. I think the main storyline, though, is obviously just how bad, as Ben said, Atletico were. It was just completely underwhelming in terms of the expectations that they had kind of going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess now we sort of talk about the quarterfinals, because now we're at the sort of business stage of the tournament. And I was asleep on Friday and then sort of woke up to Twitter reacting to it. So I knew it was a good draw when it had sort of Twitter in a frenzy, although you can't really go wrong with these 8 teams. We'll start with, we'll go, I guess, left to right in terms of the quad. Real Madrid versus Liverpool. Joe, we talk about 2 managers who have been sort of under relative pressure. Obviously, Klopp has taken a bit of a hit for what's been an underwhelming year by Liverpool standards. Zinedine Zidane has also not been too convincing of late with Real Madrid, although they are sort of starting to pick up steam. I can't see a scenario where both teams are dissatisfied with this fixture, because of all sort of the team. There were certainly other teams to avoid. This could be, a blessing in disguise for one of these teams to go forward, because then, they have a semi-final of a Champions League to show for their sort of season at the moment.
The argument that I made coming out of the draft on Friday, which was that every single English team left in European competition, all 5 of them could not have been happier with the draws that they had. I'm not saying that Real Madrid are inferior to FC Porto or Borussia Dortmund, but if you look at the way this Liverpool team play, this injury-afflicted, compact Liverpool team, of any team remaining in the Champions League, Real Madrid are probably the ones who are going to be most affected by them. They're not just 2 managers under pressure, 2, you could even argue, fallen giants by comparison to last year. However, Real Madrid, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You mentioned how poor Atletico have been recently. In light of how much their morale is going to be battered after 2 dreadful performances against Chelsea, I think Real Madrid have no excuse but to go on and put all their eggs in the La Liga basket now. I don't think they're in much contention for the Champions League overall, which is pretty unusual to say about Real Madrid. But yeah, this Liverpool team, I think this is the best possible opponent they could have had. The width that Porto were able to get would have been a problem for this Liverpool team. Dortmund, the centre-back problems that Liverpool have, plus Erling Braut Haaland, I don't need to tell you what that equals. Yeah, Real Madrid is the best that they could have hoped for. And honestly, I know Liverpool have an injury crisis, but they should be looking to go through here. This is the best draw they could have had.
Yeah, and Ben, we've obviously talked about Liverpool's sort of struggles this season throughout these different Quaran-Streams, and you would be, again, just given how, you've obviously taken a hit defensively. Obviously, it's been just injury hit, and obviously results haven't gone your way. But Real Madrid, of all the teams that were out there, this is sort of a positive, isn't it, to get them as opposed to some of the other dangers that were left in the draw?
No, I think so, and I completely agree with what Joe said. I think Dortmund would have been the worst actually Liverpool could have drawn. So I think in that sense, yeah, Liverpool should be happy with this. I also think, we've talked about sort of teams that have won the Champions League before. The Champions League, if you have poor league form, can almost act as a bit of an escape for some of these teams. I think Liverpool may feel the Champions League sort of has less pressure than the league, given their form in the league. So I think Liverpool could go far in the Champions League, and I think Liverpool need to put all their eggs into the Champions League, and they need to, do everything they can to go as far as they can and potentially win the competition. I'm not saying they will win it, but I'm saying they should definitely focus on that, because I think they're definitely not going to get top 4. I think, with their injury troubles and the consistent games of the Premier League, it's probably just not going to happen. But I think with the Champions League, they can almost have a different outlook on it. I also think it's good that they got Real Madrid, because obviously they lost to Real Madrid in the final. So and most of those players are the same. They will have, a resentment. They will want to go out there and they will want to perform. They will not be happy with the way that match ended, given Karius' poor performance. So I genuinely 100% agree with Joe. I think it's the best draw they could have got. I think mentally, I think physically, I think the way the teams play, it's a really good draw for Liverpool. And I think if Liverpool want to get anything out of this season, the only way they can do that is the Champions League now. So I think they've got to just go for it.
Yeah, and Carl, I want to bring you into this conversation. I mean, you've sort of seen how Liverpool have been they've not been great, to put it kindly. In this situation, would you sort of give up on the Premier League and sort of go for as Ben said, put your eggs into the Champions League and win that tournament, or do you still feel like the last 8-9 games left of the Premier League are still worth sort of chasing and fighting for?
I think that's quite a difficult question to answer, because although I think their whole reputation this year is completely tarnished, having lost to most of the bottom sides, that's not very easy to come back from. But at the same time, putting all your eggs in the Champions League isn't necessarily like, oh, that's okay, we'll just win the Champions League. It's not quite something that you can just get away with. And I think by putting all your eggs in the Champions League, you are open significantly more to losing. I think it's definitely worth Liverpool continuing to try as hard as they can in the Premier League. I think neglecting it would be a big mistake for them.
Yeah, I totally understand. It will be interesting to see what decision the club makes, I guess, going forward in terms of lineups they prepare and whatever. Let's go to the other one. Let's go to who the winner would play. The winner would play the winner of Porto versus Chelsea. I just realized I said the winner a lot. Porto Chelsea. We sort of alluded to it. Dan, Chelsea probably the luckiest of all 8 teams. A favourable draw that should, and you would think, given their form, that Chelsea would make it into the last 4 quite comfortably.
Yeah, I'd say so. Barring a shock of almost Tottenham versus Dynamo Zagreb proportions, I don't think we're going to see any sort of. We might see sort of a contest, but one which will be fairly easily won by Chelsea, I'd say, just because we have seen that improvement recently. People were talking about how Liverpool maybe got the best draw against Real Madrid for Liverpool. But if you're talking about, because Liverpool are going to have that extra motivation, obviously, but if we're talking about on paper who is the weakest team left, I don't think anyone can look past Porto, and Chelsea will be not just happy, but elated with that draw, I'd say.
Yeah, and Luke, we sort of, you can understand excitement building amongst Chelsea fans that this is something that they could make a run in. They're well positioned in the quarterfinals. Obviously, we sort of assume that they'll get into the top 4 of the Premier League, and maybe they certainly, I don't think won't catch City at this point. Maybe they could make up a decent fist of trying to catch United, but it'd be understandable if you sort of started to see Tuchel's stronger selections in this tournament, because they're, as I said just then, they're well positioned to make a decent run at it. And the win, going to face Liverpool, Real Madrid in the semi-finals again, that's a matchup that they will feel self-confident of winning as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that Tuchel doesn't have a choice in this. I think he has to take the Champions League seriously, and he can't just look at it and go, "Oh, it's a team from Portugal. We'll walk over this," because that's the kind of attitude that saw Juventus knocked out. I think Juventus were probably excited to draw Porto in the round of 16. So yeah, it's still a really big game for Chelsea. But I think you're correct in saying that it's also a huge opportunity, because if they beat Porto, they would have been the favourites in this round. And I think you'd probably make Chelsea the favourites in the semi-final, whether they faced Liverpool or Real Madrid. So yeah, it's an absolutely huge kind of opportunity for Tuchel and Chelsea. And it's important to remember as well that if Chelsea fans were offered this scenario kind of back in January when Frank Lampard was still in charge, you would have ripped your hand off for that, because it was such a different atmosphere around the club, and you couldn't possibly imagine a scenario where Chelsea might be favourites to make a Champions League final. So yeah, the way the draw has fallen for Chelsea is just absolutely immense. So yeah, it's a huge opportunity for them, and as you say, I think it's now is the time to prioritise the Champions League for them. Yeah,
there's no doubt that they've now got a very good chance of making a run at the tournament. On the other side of the bracket, we'll start with Manchester City versus Dortmund. The Jadon Sancho revenge game, I might call it. Obviously Erling Haaland's been linked with Man City for a while, so this could be an audition tape for him, for Pep Guardiola. But whatever you call it, again, Joe, again, City, Dortmund, you would probably make City the favourites, and yeah, Dortmund obviously have the individual quality, but as a team, as a collective team, City are clearly a lot stronger.
The strength of Man City versus Dortmund isn't so much in terms of individual personnel, but just the crazy amount of depth that they have. When Ferran Torres is maybe 4th or 5th choice out wide, you're up against a team that are absolutely stacked. The strategy for Man City in this game couldn't be much simpler. Keep the ball away from Erling Braut Haaland at any cost. Luckily, Manchester City centre-backs for the first time in about 5 years, maybe longer, are actually playing like one of the best defences in Europe. They haven't got too many injury problems at the moment. Again, I'll copy what I said with Liverpool versus Real Madrid. This is the absolute best team that they could face, because granted, Borussia Dortmund can shock one hell of a lot of teams, and I did think they were very, very impressive against Sevilla in the round of 16. But again, they are susceptible to teams that can control possession very well. What team in Europe this year probably plays a control possession style better than any other? Manchester City, clear favourites to go through in this round. Yeah,
Ben, do you agree? Do you feel like this one again favours Man City a fair bit, and that we shouldn't expect them to at least fall at this stage? Although I will say, that's what we thought with Man City Lyon last season, and Pep showed his tendency to overthink things, and they found themselves out of the competition. So do you see that potentially happening as well, or should City? Should they, I guess, keep their composure and make this a straightforward progression to the semi-final?
I think the way I look at it is this is Manchester City's Champions League to lose now, especially with the draw as well. And I think that with this Borussia Dortmund game, I think, they're in control and they can easily go and win this game. I think the thing is, we talked a lot maybe about the psychological kind of block that City have with the Champions League, and then also how Pep sometimes tends to kind of overcomplicate the tactics a little bit or something like that. And I think they're definitely valid factors. They could happen again, and because they've happened often in the past. The one thing I would say is that this year it just seems different. It just seems right. I think it seems like natural for Manchester City to win the Champions League this season. They are so controlled. They are so patient in their games. They completely kind of buy into the game plan and everything they're going to do. They treat every game differently. They almost just look like a really wholesome team. However, again, having said that, Manchester United obviously beat Manchester City not long ago, and that is probably a blueprint for how teams can beat them, because Manchester United have done that time and time again, and it works every single time. And I can't believe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer beats Pep Guardiola. I honestly can't, but it happens every single time. And I think that if teams want to beat Manchester City, there are weaknesses there. Quite clearly, there are weaknesses there. So I think that, yes, they can, but I still believe that Manchester City are in complete control of this Champions League. I think the biggest factor for Manchester City in terms of going all the way is actually this Bayern and PSG game. I think if PSG manage to knock out Bayern, I think that almost crowns Manchester City champions already. So I think in that sense, yeah, to conclude really, Manchester City, this is their Champions League to lose. I think if they want to win it, they can, but it's not as simple as that. There's a lot of factors that could go wrong.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly interesting. And yeah, as you said, United have obviously had the better run against City in the past. Joe, I go back to when we started the season and Leicester sort of single-handedly destroyed Man City at home. That can certainly happen as well. And Dortmund and Leicester, you'd think of teams of, if not similar quality, maybe slightly better quality, Dortmund can certainly punch them as well. So that's an interesting one. And then finally, I guess the most blockbuster of the blockbuster ties that we got, Bayern PSG. Dan, it's a rematch of the final of last year. Both teams have sort of the attack that can they can knock each other out in the first leg pretty much with their attacks. But then also defensively, there are a few question marks. So it should be two terrific European ties, really.
Yes and no. I mean, PSG, I don't think have improved on last year. In anything, I'd say they've gotten worse. The fact that they beat Barcelona, just goes to show more of just goes to show that Barcelona are just a bit of a state at the moment, regardless of whether they're going to win La Liga or not. PSG aren't even a certainty to win the French league. I think Lille are on top of the French league by 3 points, something like that. And we're going to the business end of the French league at the moment due to the fact that they have got less teams there. So I think it's going to be Bayern all the way, to be honest. I mean, but you can never discount that PSG attack, with Neymar and Mbappe. So I think it'll be a Bayern win, but there is always the chance that Neymar and Mbappe can salvage something for PSG.
Yeah, and Luke, yeah, I mean, as Dan said, both teams, they we've seen them not turn up as well as them be on that at their absolute best. Certainly PSG with Pochettino. I mean, Pochettino, this is not for someone who I guess, PSG would want, we know the PSG want the Champions League badly, and this, stacks the deck against Pochettino's favor. But equally, Bayern have, played that high line, and if you had to think of an attack that could break down that high line, Mbappe and Neymar is not a bad one to have a go at it. So, it's a tie that could go either way. But, I understand why Dan puts Bayern at favourites, but it could easily go the other way as well.
To be honest, I agree with Dan. I think Bayern are not quite comfortably favourites, but I think there's a fair margin between the two teams based on what we've seen this year, as kind of Dan alluded to. It's like PSG aren't dominating in the way you'd expect them to domestically as well. So this is a huge game for them in terms of defining their season. I think obviously PSG have the talent. Obviously they have kind of the attacking kind of pieces that you talk about, Neymar and Mbappe. It depends on kind of who's available. Neymar, of course, injured at the moment, but Mbappe is a player who has his whole career ahead of him. He's already won a World Cup. He's already won everything there is to win in France. So it's a huge opportunity for him to kind of stake a claim and show what he can do kind of in the Champions League this time out. For me, I think the thing that will define this is who defends better, and I have a hell of a lot more faith in Bayern Munich's defence than I would Paris Saint-Germain's, especially with kind of the number of injuries they have at the moment kind of across the team. So for me, I think this is Bayern's to lose. I think kind of if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say 65% Bayern chance of winning this one. I do think they're the better team, and I think that will show over kind of the next two legs next month.
Yeah, and we will. I'm sure a lot of us are sort of very excited at the prospect of Bayern Man City. I know some have questioned why weren't those two teams kept apart for a final matchup? But I think 2 legs semi-final Man City Bayern would be really interesting to see how they play against each other in 2 legs. But anyway, I guess we'll get into more sort of specific predictions, I guess, closer to the games. But...
Oh, sorry. I'm just watching the Man City Arsenal. Sorry, West Ham Arsenal game. And Jesse Lingard has just scored an absolute screamer into the top net.
We'll change the sticker. West Ham are 1-0 up against Arsenal. Lingard. Gosh, I want to react, but like it's sort of like my brain can't compute. It's sort of like there's one of those just like, whoa, what's going on?
My stream's just caught up. I've just seen the goal.
There we go.
What a goal! He hits it on the half volley into the top.
I feel like we're going to get a Mexican corner. It's going to be a Mexican wave of reactions as everyone's stream sort of picks up slowly.
How far behind are your streams? Because I'm looking at. Oh, okay, it's just gone through now. Pardon me. Sorry. Google was slow.
This is such a raw thing. This is honestly such a raw thing. This is sort of why we stopped doing Super Saturday, at least in this format, because everyone will just be different stages. But that's a big goal. I don't know if anyone has an instant reaction to that they want to label. We'll circle back around to the tie to West Ham Arsenal as a whole. But does anyone have an instant reaction to that goal? Luke, I'll give you the floor. I mean, is there an instant reaction or is it?
It was a nice goal. Antonio broke down the left-hand side, which is obviously unusual for him. Is a really right kind of footed dominant player. West Ham have looked really good as a whole. I think until about 12 minutes into the game, Arsenal hadn't had a pass in the final third, which is abysmal, to be completely honest, for Arsenal.
It's another one! 2-0! And it's Darren Bowen!
Right, we might have to pause that on Luke. We might have to pause your reaction. You know what? Let's just save this for halftime because I feel like this is a game where reactions are going to just change by the minute. So, oh gosh, what were we talking about? Champions League. That's
completely fall asleep. Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, you know what? This is a good time. You know what? Let's switch to Europa League. We'll talk Arsenal in just a sec. I did want to ask everyone just put as many fingers up. 1 to 3 rather. How many English teams make it to the semi-final of the Champions League? If everyone can just put up how many fingers they think. Oh, let me put the ties back up. There we go. Just show fingers. 2. Dan has 2. Does anyone else want to?
We're gonna go with
2, 3, 2.
It should be 3, but one of them's gonna let us down.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean. Carl, someone who doesn't really follow, because obviously your team's not in the Champions League, so I don't know how much you follow it, but does that excite you that all these English teams are going to make it far? Is it sort of, or is it just sort of, the Premier League's rich, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just because you would want it to be there just because the amount of money that was there, if that makes sense. It's not just I'm not here saying English football's amazing. They're all in the Champions League. They're all doing really well. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, it's what you'd expect. It's what you'd hope, given the amount of money that is shoved into the Premier League. You'd expect this kind of, not dominance, but this amount of presence in the final 8 of the Champions League. But I'm just saying, if anyone's going to screw up, it's Liverpool. Let's be honest here.
Is that the consensus? I mean, of all the people the people who put 2 fingers up, is Liverpool the one that we all expect to fall at this hurdle?
Either Liverpool or Man City.
Okay. Yep. Okay, that's a consensus. All right. Well, we'll talk about those games in more detail as we get closer to the actual dates of those games. Unless Jesse Lingard or Jared Bowen want to intervene any further, I'm safely going to move on to Europa League. We'll talk. Let's just run through this. We'll get to Spurs. I'm sure a lot of people want to weigh in on Spurs. We'll get to Spurs. Let's go through the straightforward ones. United, Milan, probably the blockbuster tie of the Europa League. Dan, I'll come to you first. Paul Pogba again just pops up with shows how good he is with a vital second half goal. That United are back in contention for this tournament. They were this time last year, and they're back again.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the game, and I'd say definitely over the two legs, Milan were the better team. I don't think anyone can argue with that. United looked poor. There were so many misplaced passes. It was just infuriating. But Paul Pogba comes up big with a good goal. It was a very good finish, actually, although it might not look it at first glance. It's actually a very good finish. He manages to sort of dummy the keeper and, destabilize Donnarumma, and then just slots it into the corner. But yeah, he was a difference. I mean, you could also say that Dean Henderson was a difference because he made a save that he hadn't previously made the week before when Simon Kjaer, I'm going to say Kjaer, managed to score a goal. But yeah, I'd say Milan were the better of the two teams, and it was just that individual quality from Paul Pogba which managed to get the win for us.
Yeah, and I mean, Ben, you're also a United fan. This was a huge result, I guess, in terms of standout moments of the season as a United fan. Going to Milan and getting an away win is obviously will be up there with the highlights of the season. Did you learn anything new about this United team? Or was there anything that surprised you, or was this I don't know what you were expecting, but did anyone's performance or anything like that surprise you?
I think in terms of individual performance, Amad Diallo's goal in the first leg was a delight to see, because what a goal it was from someone who is, I don't know his exact height, but he is very small. To produce a header like that was absolutely immense. So that was fantastic to see. But it was good for Manchester United because, especially in the first leg, there was a lot of injuries. That midfield that actually there's quite a lot of depth in. There wasn't many available. I think it was pretty much just sort of a 50% kind of Scott McTominay, Fred and Matic were the only real and obviously Bruno Fernandes were the only midfielders really available for that game. Now, obviously, Van der Beek was on the bench, and Pogba came on. And obviously made the difference there. So I think for Manchester United, they sort of just got through the leg, and that's definitely encouraging. The one thing I would say that my concern with Manchester United is going forward is and Solskjaer's proven me wrong, and a lot of the comments I've made definitely on this show is just the sort of lack of substitutions and lack of rotation. I mean, Harry Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Bruno Fernandes play almost every single minute of every game. We beat West Ham a couple of weeks ago, and it was a really good performance, but didn't make a single sub, which in precedented times is very weird, let alone when there's a lot of fixture congestion. It's very odd not to make a single substitution. And that is my only fear for Manchester United. I think some of these players are starting to look very tired. However, saying that, they're still getting results, obviously, into the Europa League. I think probably our favourites going into that now. I think obviously the other teams up there, like the likes of sort of maybe Ajax and Arsenal, I think they're definitely has less quality than Manchester United. So I think it's positive. It's definitely positive for Manchester United. What I don't want to see is Manchester United drop out the top 4 just to win the Europa League, because I know you still get Champions League through that. I think it's definitely a progression that Manchester United are the closest team to Manchester City. I think that's definitely needed in terms of progression of this team, but more so needed in the progression of this team is to win a trophy. This team needs to win a trophy. Solskjaer needs to win a trophy. And I think that will definitely breed confidence and breed more of a winning mentality. And again, like I said, will show sort of this team and how this team is progressing for the future. So I think a lot of positives to take from Manchester United. They got through it with injuries. So hopefully a lot more to come in the future, as I know they play today against Leicester.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the United-Leicester FA Cup tie in just a bit. But yeah, a big win for Solskjaer as he sort of goes forward in trying to win a trophy for United. Joe, just quickly, from Milan's point of view, is that disappointing for them? Or should they, now they'll have all the energy and time in the world to focus on Serie A, which I know they've had a little bit of a slump, but certainly not out of it just yet.
2021 in Serie A feels like a different decade for Milan, let alone year. It's so perfect that the end of 2020 coincided with the end of Milan probably being the best team in the league on form, after being amazing ever since the first lockdown ended. I remember when the draw was first made for the round of 16, actually, a lot of people were saying that this was, the gangbuster tie, the big blockbuster of all of the fixtures. And then I held up a list of all the players that Milan had injured. And going into the second leg, it just got even worse. Theo Hernandez, who's for me their MVP this year, he was back on the left, albeit still basically made of glass. Davide Calabria, who's become their best right back, somewhat unprecedentedly, he was injured for this game. Ismail Benacer, their most important player, he'd only just come back, was injured. No Alessio Romagnoli, who is on paper their best centre-back and indeed their captain. No Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the guy who has the most experience against Man United, and indeed their striker. They couldn't even put Rafa Lau on as a backup because he was injured as well. They had to have Castillejo and Salamakis up front, which they're not forwards, no matter how much you say. I said on Twitter before the game, interacting with some of the stuff that Luke put up with Boar Sport, that there were absolutely no excuses for Manchester United. They had to win this game clearly. Anything less than that would be a disappointment. And the truth is, this whole fixture was decided, as Dan says, by 3 moments of individual brilliance against a Milan team that, against the odds, genuinely performed better. A 9 out of 10 pass from Bruno Fernandes, followed by a 10 out of 10 opportunistic finish by Amad Diallo. And then the second half, again, Paul Pogba, proving why, at least on paper, I'd still argue he's the best player in this Manchester United team. Man of the match over these 2 legs for Man United was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I'm sorry to say it, he nailed substitutions in this tie. People are more than welcome to criticise his subs in the Premier League, but in this tie, he really did make the difference because, as Dan said already, Milan were so much better. Franck Kessié, in particular, in the first leg, completely outworked that Manchester United midfield. They got very lucky to face Milan when they did.
Yeah, and then that's sort of the final question I had for Luke, I guess, because obviously, yeah, as Joe said, you guys covered it for Ball Sport, did some live text activities with that game. Franck Kessié was the one name I guess I saw on Twitter that I guess had his reputation bolstered by his performances over the 2 legs from Milan's side. Was there anyone else on either team that you saw have sort of have their reputations bolstered? Dean Henderson maybe, or I don't know. Is there any name you want to throw out there?
I was going to say Henderson in the second leg. Of course, the first leg wasn't one that he'll look back on fondly with the goal at the end. But in the second leg, he did exactly what it's him to do from a Manchester United perspective. He made that save on Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I think it was on around 77 minutes, and that essentially won them the game and won them the tie. So yeah, I think in terms of Henderson being someone who you can rely on in those moments, then yeah, I think that was definitely helpful, especially in the week where obviously the England squad came out as well. His distribution was good. Yeah, a commanding performance from him, and he also he looked really up for it. He looked really, really up for it. I think at one point he made a fairly routine save, and the speed at which he distributed the ball was quite something, especially at 1-0 up in a game where they was just trying to hold on. So yeah, Henderson for me was my man of the match in the second leg, and the player to keep an eye on going forwards.
Yeah, it looks like David De Gea. I mean, I know David De Gea is obviously he's had personal issues recently, and obviously has been away from the team. But Dean Henderson's obviously making it a lot harder for him to go, I guess, earn his spot back when he returns to the team. I don't think there's too much to say about Arsenal. They lost to Olympiacos 1-0, but still got through. So I don't think there's too much to say on that tie. But the tie that got the most attention, I would say, on Thursday night was Dinamo Zagreb winning 3-0 against Spurs in Croatia. Let's see. I mean, Carl, I do want to ask you, because we've sort of gone back and forth on, are Spurs a good team? Are they not a good team? Obviously, Bale was back, and suddenly it looked like, oh, they're a really great team, and then they sort of crashed back down to earth again in this one. I mean, as a Brighton fan, does a team like Spurs, do they scare you at all, or do you think they can be had at because it's just so up and down, just generally?
I think their inconsistency gives them a lack of fear, because you know when you're going to a team that's on form that there will be a fear factor behind it. But if a team are going to go play Spurs, they'll look at it and see that although they can play well, they have a record of absolutely tanking games, and this just shows how ridiculously inconsistent Spurs can be and have been for quite a long time now. It's not even surprising anymore that Spurs tank results. And yeah, it's not even just as a team. You see individual players not even putting in the effort anymore. And you can just look at one player and see the lack of commitment in that game and know the entire team is also showing that lack of commitment. I think it must be a classic Mourinho man-managing incident. It's always that. And it's just how Mourinho goes, isn't it?
Yeah, and, Joe, Mourinho obviously gets a lot of, park the bus. Like, his game management has obviously at times been praised and seeing out games. And you would think with someone like, with the way he plays with Højbjerg, sort of that anchor who's obviously thrived a lot this season, you'd have thought that Tottenham had enough to see the result out. And yet, no, game management, I can't. Can anyone explain it? Like, how do you? I mean, you saw a little bit of the game. How? I don't know. It just felt inexplicable for them to sort of come down to against a team whose manager was arrested for tax issues in Croatia, taxation issues.
Yeah, the Croatian Premier League always has a good story like that. To be honest, I saw most of this game because I had an inkling that one of the English teams was going to bottle it, and when bottling is a synonym for Tottenham Hotspur, so I had that on in the background behind Shakhtar Roma. And I remember a few years ago in the Europa League as well. Actually, I think it was the round of 32. Tottenham faced KAR Ghent from the Belgian Pro League, and Tottenham won the first leg, but did not. I think it may have been a draw, but they just did not look good. They looked outperformed by a vastly inferior team, and there was just something in at least the highlights of that first leg back in London last week that just it felt like Tottenham were not performing at their best. I felt Zagreb deserved to get something out of this game, and I promise you, I predicted going into this that something bad was going to happen. I honestly thought Dinamo Zagreb would turn it round. However, I didn't think it was going to be quite that easy for them. The guy I criticised so much, Dele Alli, who every time I criticise him then has an 8 out of 10 the following weekend, had a 2 out of 10 game. Absolutely abysmal. The lack of shots on target from Tottenham Hotspur can be largely blamed on him. But, it's funny you mentioned Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. He wasn't available for this game. Harry Winks was playing in his position, and on form alone, I don't need to tell you just how superior Højbjerg is of the two. When I was looking at this in the first leg, because Roma Shakhtar was boring me to tears, I was doing a little bit of research into the Zagreb players, and Mislav Orsic immediately sprung to attention just because of his goal-scoring record over in the Hrvatskan Premier League this year. It was pretty obvious that he was going to cause a threat in this game, and neither Aurier nor Eric Dyer, who again had a dreadful performance at centre-back, no one seemed to be covering him off. He was dangerous in the first half. It was only a matter of time. Guess what? The guy goes and scores a hat-trick across regulation and extra time. As Mourinho said in those post-match comments, Tottenham never looked like they were in the game until realistically the second half of extra time. Hugo Lloris was absolutely disgusted by the effort put in with the players in front of him. You could just read it in that interview, and he's absolutely right. Lloris has been oftentimes a saviour of this very, very poor Tottenham Hotspur team this year. Yeah, there's not much I can really say apart from I saw this coming. I'm very, very proud of the fact I saw it coming, and there is something far greater than managerial issues at Tottenham Hotspur. This has happened one too many times, and again, this just felt like a repeat of the Ghent tie a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and before I ask, I do want to ask the United fans a bit about Mourinho, their Mourinho experience, shall we say. But as Dan has pointed out, thank you, Dan, it is, and now I guess, now I'm just watching everyone's stream catch up again. It is West Ham 3, Arsenal 0. Mikel Antonio has scored again, scored for the first time today at least. Well, maybe we do have some stuff to talk about Arsenal. I don't know. This is sort of becoming a bit of a nightmare scenario for them. Ben, I did want to ask you about, you've obviously sat for a Mourinho experience at United, obviously ended quite badly. Dan, I mean, you've they play Aston Villa next. I mean, we might as well just discuss that game now because I don't really feel the need to, I guess, make it a special thing to focus on. Villa obviously a good side, obviously no I don't think Grealish is playing. I highly doubt he.
No, Grealish is out. Grealish is out for that game.
Yeah, and obviously without Tottenham, without Son Heung-min as well. Should we expect a response? I mean, what do you make of this Tottenham team going at the moment? Because again, as we saw we thought Bale was back and we thought that'd lift them.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been the case.
The problem I find with Mourinho, and I found it with Mourinho at Man United, is he always starts off. He used to always start off really well. He doesn't seem to anymore. And with Mourinho, he can never seem to sort of rebound back from it. I remember Mourinho's time was up at Man United when we got beat by Sevilla in the round of 16 in the Champions League. I think his time's up now, even though he hasn't been sacked yet. I don't think he'll be able to fully motivate the players. And he can never sort of rebuild the confidence that the players had in him at the start. So they might be Aston Villa, but will he ever fully be able to get all of the Tottenham players and the Tottenham fans on board? I don't think so. And I think that's why he's basically a dead man walking.
Ben, weigh in on the Mourinho experience. I mean, yeah, I don't. It's weird because at first, given Villa's sort of injuries, I'd have thought Tottenham would be wouldn't be the favourites for this. But now, and this is sort of the start of another Tottenham slump. I mean, it's going to be a close game, but yeah, it's just. I guess we never know what kind of Tottenham are going to turn up week to week, and it can be hugely frustrating, I imagine.
Yeah, no, it must be so frustrating for the Spurs fans. And I think especially that defeat to Zagreb is even worse, considering they lost the North London derby as well the weekend before. So I think really not a good week to be a Spurs fan. It's described as Spursy, and I know Spurs fans don't like that term, but if they carry on making these performances, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to live with that term. So I think, yeah, I feel sorry for Spurs fans. Regarding Mourinho, see, the thing is, we never really know because we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But what we do know is that he rubs players up the wrong way. They really get unhappy. I mean, Marcus Rashford, and we all know, what a fantastic guy he is. He was really down. Luke Shaw was, very, very kind of almost medially abused by Mourinho. And then I think that seems to happen with Tottenham. Apparently there was this kind of conflict with Gareth Bale. There is this ongoing conflict. I know it said it was resolved, but we don't really know, with Dele Alli as well. You get players who just get kind of rubbed up the wrong way, stop believing. And I think that's the thing. It's happened before with Mourinho. So it's clearly something that he's doing, because it consistently happens. It's so bizarre that his most, since he didn't win the league in his second season with Man United, his most consistent thing that he does at every single club is fail in the third year. So I think that almost is potentially coming early for Spurs. I expect a reaction from these players. I think it'd be unacceptable for these players to not win against Aston Villa, because I think whatever you say about Jose Mourinho, he did not set his team up to go and lose to Zagreb. That is a player motivation fault there for me. That is individuals not performing well at all. So I think it's probably, maybe a mixture of that. But like I said before, this happens time and time again with Jose Mourinho. There's clearly, he's lacking something in terms of man management, because the fact of the matter is he makes a lot of players unhappy, and you're never going to go far if your players are unhappy.
Well, we say unhappy. I mean, someone from Joe Hart's media team, thought they were happy because he thought they'd won 3-0. I would be remiss not to mention this incident in which Joe Hart, his team tweeted out "job done," and then got a lot of abuse from Tottenham fans, I imagine, then had to put out an apology saying someone from his media team didn't follow the result. A bit of a PR disaster, just an absolute. Joe, I see.
Just in on that quickly. First of all, I forgot that happened, so thanks for reminding me. Nice to have a laugh on a Sunday afternoon. Secondly, does that not point out just how disunified this Tottenham Hotspur team is? If Joe Hart and his media team weren't following what was hands down the most important game for them for some time, the game that would again define their reputation in Europe for probably several years, they weren't even following it, despite him being, I'd forgotten to be honest, a contracted player at that club. Mental.
I dare say that's the most memorable thing Joe Hart's done at Tottenham since he arrived. It'll probably be the thing he's remembered for. But anyway, so yeah, here's the quarterfinals for the Europa League. I mean, I obviously go to the United fans again. Ben, I'll start with you this time. Granada. I mean, obviously a team from La Liga, a slightly more physical, a bit more direct team. So not, known for their like attractive football, but certainly efficiency in getting results. But again, it does feel like a very favorable United tie, and I would be shocked if you didn't get through.
Yeah, a different challenge, but still a very favourable tie. I think I expect nothing more than Manchester United to sort of kind of ease through this one. I think it would be criminal not to do so. The thing is with Manchester United, they seem to be able to get to the semi-final. It seems the semi-final they've not got past at the moment. Of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I think 3 or 4 occasions now they're kind of crash out in the semi-final. So again, with the courses I expect us to go through and where the competition really starts to heat up. In terms of maybe kind of opponents for the whole competition, probably Arsenal you'd have to look out for, but given their performance against Olympiacos midweek and their performance to West Ham right now, that might not be too much of a challenge. So yeah, I think it's positive for Manchester United. Again, I think it just kind of relies on the key players, the Paul Pogba getting back fit, Bruno Fernandes remaining fit. I think Harry Maguire as well. I think if Harry Maguire, the amount of games he's playing, if he got injured, that's really worrying for Manchester United. Marcus Rashford might have a little bit of an injury as well. So I think it's basically just making sure some of these players keep fit. And if they do, I think, yeah, Manchester United, they can definitely progress into the next round. And if not, they can go all the way.
Yeah, and Dan, I guess, for you, I guess, assuming the best version of United come to play in this Europa League, Granada should get past Granada. And then I guess then it'll be interesting to see who they get in the semi-finals after that, whether it's Ajax or Roma, who I would say a much tougher test than Granada. But yeah, looks like a pretty straightforward route for sure.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I mean, they've got 35-year-old Roberto Soldado up front, who didn't exactly light up the Premier League when he was in his prime at Tottenham. Other players, they've got Kennedy, who I think he might still be contracted to Chelsea. There's that classic Chelsea thing of just forgetting about players who are on loan. Maxime Gonalons, who used to be a good player at Lyon. I'm not saying he's a bad player now, but he's at Granada, who have got the joint worst goals conceded record in La Liga. Real Sociedad are a much better team than them, and I remember we beat them 4-0 in the first leg in the Europa League. So yeah, definitely looking forward. I'd hope for a big win instead of just a win. But yeah, I see it as being nothing more than a formality. I'm really hoping that doesn't come to bite me in the bum. But yeah, hopefully nothing more than a formality, and then we can see who we'll face in the next round.
I have to say, between you and I have to mention Kylan Stillwood and Joe will know this, and obviously maybe Dan as well. Kylan obviously was supporting Granada on Thursday, had the Granada shutout. Between the two of you, we could definitely put a scouting report out there on Granada. But yes, I did check. Kennedy is still on loan from Chelsea.
Okay,
yeah. I didn't know he was named after Robert Kennedy, the U.S. politician. Thing I've learned for today. The winner of that tie obviously plays Ajax Roma. Now, Joe, you watched both ties that these two teams were involved with on Thursday. I also watched the Young Boys Ajax game, which to be honest, there's not much to say. Ajax are just very good. Young Boys just didn't turn up. But Ajax Roma, I mean, you're also a Roma fan as well. So what's the perspective here? Because Ajax are obviously very lethal on the attack. And I suppose Roma sort of, if the best version of Roma shows up, they can make this a real competition for a real interesting tie.
A lot of people think Roma can go all the way because they're just not aware of the serious amount of players that we have absent. The honest truth is, Josh, I was watching the draw, watching again just how favourably it fell for the British teams in both the Champions and Europa League. There was one team I really did not want to face in the Europa League quarterfinals, and it was Ajax Amsterdam. So I was swearing for a lot of time. A lot of people, especially on Roma forums that I'm on, seem to think it's going to be a competitive fixture with the amount of injuries we have. I really, really question that. Honestly, but personally, even if by some miracle Granada were able to beat Manchester United and we were able to beat Ajax, I actually think Granada could probably go through against us. Again, having something to do with injuries, but really of any team that's going to kind of unlock this very attacking focused AS Roma team ravaged by injuries, especially in the final third, I think it is going to be Ajax. I know they've lost great players over the last few years, but that's part and parcel with this Ajax team. yeah, I really do not have much hope going into this. I would put Ajax the strongest team in this competition, believe it or not.
Well, I mean, Ajax, obviously, just, a constant conveyor belt of young talent. Ryan Gravenberch at the moment, that midfielder, 18-year-old, obviously doing some wonderful stuff there as well. On the other side of the draw, Luke, I'll come to you for a reaction to Arsenal Slavia Prague, obviously. And I mean, we shouldn't have to say this, but we obviously condemn the alleged, I should add, racist incident towards Glenn Kamara Rangers. Obviously, that we still have to wait for an informal investigation and all that before we can formally say it. But I mean, Slavia Prague, as you pointed out on Twitter, they have played. This is the third British team in a row they'll be playing. They got past Leicester. They've got past Rangers. Now they have Arsenal. I mean, what's your general thoughts and reaction to that tie? Because it's a potential banana skin for Arsenal. Should they, and they could slip up against this Czech side, this Brazilian Czech side, who have, managed to put together some really good performances in this competition.
I wouldn't even necessarily frame it like that. I honestly think Slavia have a really good opportunity to go through. I think Leicester are a better team than Arsenal, and they dealt with Leicester fairly kind of comfortably back in the round of 32. So it's a really big opportunity for them, a Czech side, to make it into kind of the next round. I think building on what's already been said, I think the semi-final on the other side of the draw is basically going to decide who wins this. I think kind of that is the game to watch. In terms of Slavia versus Arsenal, I think Arsenal face a huge challenge. Arsenal, as we're kind of watching at the moment today, that they're struggling at the minute. And I think it's hard to kind of identify what kind of progress they're making under Mikel Arteta. So if Arsenal are going to win this game, they need to stay really strong defensively, and they need to get the best out of their attacking players. And what we've seen from Arsenal so far in Europe is that they're kind of just a bit average, and they kind of miss these opportunities, and they don't defend particularly well. They just need to improve in all areas. If they don't improve in all areas, I could honestly see them going out. So yeah, it's a big task for them. It's not as simple as saying Arsenal are from the Premier League, they're going to win, because I mean they're currently, I think, 10th in the Premier League, and they're losing to West Ham. So that's hardly a great position to be in for Arsenal. So yeah, I think it's a difficult game, no doubt whatsoever.
Yeah, and they will obviously, should they go through, they will play the winner of Dinamo Zagreb Villarreal, which sets up the potential Unai Emery reunion, which I guess is the one meaningful narrative I'll hold on to on that side of the draw. My final question with the Europa League, and we'll get to West Ham Arsenal next, because that I think is now crossed into the halftime area, so we'll have a chance to breathe and a chance to reflect on the first half. I'm going to ask the panel, how many English teams make the final of the Europa League? How many of the English teams make the final? Obviously, one or two is, or none is sort of the answers here. So Arsenal have to play Dinamo Zagreb and Villarreal. Should they get past Slavia Prague? And United, should they beat Granada, have to face Ajax Roma? So show of fingers, how many? So Dan predicts an all-English final. Luke thinks one. Ben one. Carl one. Joe none. Okay, that's interesting.
If Roma go through against Ajax, United will make the final. If Ajax go through, they will make the final.
Okay, and for everyone who put one, presumably you predict United will go through. Actually, I'm not sure. I mean, or is it Arsenal who go through? Carl's nodding with United. Luke, was United the one you were referring to with the one? Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. Manchester United crash out of semi-finals. I think if we face Ajax, we will be out.
Okay, right. Interesting. We will see how that one falls. And again, closer to the date, we will sort of put some sort of detailed preview right out. Right, I have to get to this because obviously this is the game that sort of grabbed attention at the moment. And it is now, let me check the correct scoreline, 3-1. Yep, it's halftime now, 3-1 West Ham, Arsenal. Clear. I mean, I know for a fact 4 of you are probably watching the game. Dan, you've been on it from the start. Is this a reflection of that Arsenal had to play on Thursday and West Ham have obviously looked rested and fresher and attacking the game with a lot more energy?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think it's the fact that Arsenal centre-halves are Pablo Mari and David Luiz. For the second goal especially, Arsenal just switched off from a quick free kick, which allowed Jared Bowen to get in on the right-hand side and then squeeze a shot past Bernd Leno, which he really should have done better with. West Ham's attack is very fluid. They've got Said Benrahma, Jesse Lingard, and Jared Bowen all behind Mikel Antonio, who absolutely bullied someone for the third goal. I can't remember. I think it was David Luiz, but I can't remember. It might have been Pablo Mari. And just got bullied in the air. And they actually managed to get a goal back. It was actually a Souček own goal in the end, because Lacazette's shot, which wasn't from far away, was actually just going off target, which just shows what a great striker Lacazette is.
Oh, yep. Sorry, hang on. There we go. I was just checking the BBC live text for there. So I mean, as you said, Souček, I mean, it seemingly has been all involved in all areas of the pitch. Obviously, Jesse Lingard had a week off last week, has come back, and we will talk about the England squad and his call-up afterwards. But I mean, Luke, you got to be excited. I mean, we talk every week about how West Ham seems to be on this sort of wave at the moment, and we'll put the table up, although it does need a bit of course correction. I think you win this and you're level on points with Chelsea in for fourth spot, so that's got to be incredibly exciting if you're able to pull this off. And I guess my next question to you is, are you confident that you'll be able to see this game out for the next 45 minutes?
No, not particularly. The last kind of 10-15 minutes, Arsenal have improved a fair amount. I think if you look at the discourse on Twitter, of course this isn't live anyway, but the discourse on Twitter at the moment is that Arsenal have been completely abysmal. The last 10-15 minutes they've been the better team. West Ham have looked a little bit shaky in defence, so there's every opportunity that by the time the show ends, Arsenal could have drawn this game 3-3. I'm under no illusions about that. But kind of to answer your question, it's really exciting. It's a little bit unbelievable. If you look at the Premier League standings at the minute, West Ham 51 points. If West Ham win today, they'll go on to 51 points on 12 goal difference at the minute. That is just completely unheard of for this team. And again, it's important to stress this is David Moyes' West Ham United Football Club, 5th in the Premier League after 29 matches. Ridiculous. What I would say about the game today, Thomas Souček scored at both ends of the pitch. Both was a complete accident. The first one, Antonio won what was a really good header in the box. Looked like it was going to go in, and then kind of it bounced off Souček and went in. It was hard to see, but it was Souček's goal. At the other end, it was a really nice strike from Lacazette that ultimately went into the back of the net. I think the most impressive thing about West Ham is that they deserve to be where they are. I know we get into a huge discourse about is XG worth the paper it's printed on, all this kind of stuff. But if you look at that kind of stuff, West Ham are legitimately in a position where they deserve to be. And I think that speaks to the quality of the play this year. And I think it speaks to how kind of dependable they've been. It's not a huge surprise that West Ham are taking the game to Arsenal. I mean, it's just incredible that's even a conversation to have, to be completely honest. What I would say in terms of criticism of West Ham and where West Ham can improve, there are some games where David Moyes has a serious inferiority complex and just completely sits back too deep, and it does a disservice to the team, because West Ham have shown on days like today against Arsenal, they've shown that they can get at teams with lots of these star players and can really make an impact. And with all due respect to Manchester United, of course, doing much better than Arsenal this year, but there was no reason to say that West Ham couldn't have given that more of a go. I think in terms of the strategy that West Ham need to implement now, it needs to be a 4 at the back. Dawson, Diop, kind of Soufal and Cresswell. Again, ridiculous to say that back 4 is potentially on the cards for a push in the Champions League next season. But yeah, it's a wonderful time to be a West Ham fan. I don't quite believe that it's going to end happily. I think the wheels could very well fall off, and that's not a couple of months ago. But for now, I'll enjoy it, and fingers crossed they can see this one out, because 3-1 is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I recently read about a retrospective of Gold and Sullivan's sort of coming up to their 11th year, I guess, in charge of the club, and I might venture to say, and I'm curious if there is, and maybe there's a short answer or a long answer for this. Is this the most exciting season you've seen under them in their tenure at West Ham, or has there been other ones?
No, the final season at Upton Park was better than this.
Okay.
Partly because we were physically there. A lot of that obviously links into just how good Dimitri Payet was. I think there's more sentimentality about that season. And to be brief, if you look at the players on this squad, it's fairly new. If you look at the players in that 2016 team, there were so many fan favourites, and it was so historic where we were, and it was under kind of Slavan Bilic, who is still absolutely adored at kind of the London Stadium as it is now. So yeah, that was a better season for me. I think it's one where it was easy to believe. It was easy to obviously be there. But yeah, this is quite something. This is really quite something this year because David Moyes has done such a good job. There have been games where he has totally kind of messed it up, but as a whole, he's done a pretty good job. And I think kind of the emergence of Jesse Lingard on loan has been ridiculous, honestly ridiculous. And it's an exciting time to be a West Ham fan. And I think looking ahead towards next year, of course, Mark Noble's final year at the club. If West Ham qualify for Europe, that will be a really nice way to kind of sign off his tenure as a West Ham player and obviously the club captain as well.
There I am. I mean, look, the Mark Noble last Michael Jordan-esque last dance season where he gets to go to the Champions League or Europa League for that matter and just play at all these random European destinations, that looks certainly more likely than I guess it ever has been. I'm seeing a lot of, I mean, am I surprised? I'm seeing a lot of Arteta out sort of things on Twitter at the moment. Dan,
Is one of them from DT by any chance?
Well, we'll run. I don't know which Arsenal Fan TV AFTV person is doing it at the moment. Dan, just quickly because I know you're watching this game. Is there anything about Arsenal's tactics or their play that has surprised you, has disappointed you? What's your perspective on that?
I'd probably just say, it's the fact that West Ham have got a better attack than Arsenal have a defence. That's the thing. That's the thing about it. Just Pablo Mari and David Luiz should be nowhere near the starting 11, and they are. And when West Ham have got an attack of, Antonio, Benrahma, Lingard, Bowen, and then you've got Thomas Souček, who's always in there or thereabouts. It's what I would have expected to happen. I would have expected that attack to breach that defence, and I would have put West Ham as the favourites going into that game. So if you want to lay the blame in the hands of Mikel Arteta, be my guest. But the fact is, the team isn't good enough. Is that his fault? If it is, then yeah, he should get sacked. If it isn't, if it's the fault of the fact that he's not had enough time to rebuild, then then give him more time. But the team isn't good enough, to be honest.
Luke, I know you wanted to weigh in on this.
The issue that Arsenal are having today, at least for the first kind of half an hour, 40 minutes, is both Aubameyang and Lacazette were playing in wide positions. They were playing a really weird system with Odegaard kind of in a strange pocket of space as well. I think he's got his set up really badly wrong. And I think in the second half, we'll probably see some changes and Arsenal will start to come into the game a little bit more. I just wanted to say Arsenal have got this first half really, really badly wrong in terms of the way they set up. And it's really surprising because there was never any mystery about what West Ham team they'd be facing today. I could have told you the lineup 3-4 days ago. This was obviously how West Ham would set up this match. It's not a good afternoon for Arteta, but of course he now has the opportunity to learn from the first 45 and turn it around.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if he makes any changes going into the second half. And the reason why I was just checking a message from Joe, Juventus have lost 1-0 at home to Benevento, which I'm sure that if there wasn't pressure on Andrea Pirlo, there will be now in terms of his managerial lifeline, I guess. But yeah, let's talk about, I'm sort of switching plans on the fly. Let's talk about the results that have happened so far this week. And obviously this is the third Premier League fixture. We obviously had Leeds beating Fulham 2-1 on Friday. And then the big one on Saturday night, the big old fixture on Saturday night, Brighton Newcastle. Brighton getting a 3-0 win. Is at this point of the show, I turn to Carl Henningway and go, isn't it? I mean, how did it feel? How did it feel to get a win that will go a long way to securing another season in the Premier League?
I mean, I love coming on this show and just being able to flex that Brighton might actually still be in the Premier League next season. It was such a good performance from Brighton. It is the sort of performance we've wanted to see all season. We wanted to see shots be converted into goals. This is what we've been wanting for probably years. Honestly, ever since we came up from the Championship, we've been wanting goals to be scored, not just shot at goal. We had three different players. We had Trossard, Welbeck, and Mopé all score. And hopefully this will give us a good stead for all the really difficult fixtures we got coming up. But this win is not only just good for the points, it puts us 6 points ahead of relegation. It's good just for the fact that we now have an end to what was apparently a worrying streak for Brighton. There was a lot of sort of buzz about Brighton aren't doing well, Fulham are looking better, but in actual fact, in sort of like the previous 10 games, out of all of the three sides, Brighton had still come out with more points. And I think this season is one that, again, we're going to be like, let's stay up this season and see what we can do next season. This has happened every season that we've been in the Prem, but under Potter, I'm genuinely excited. I think for most recently, Potter is our best asset. We don't necessarily have the best team I've ever seen, but we have a team that is run by a manager who is incredibly smart and knows how to manage play as well, which is what gives me such an optimistic look for the future, and it does every season. Let's just hope after this period of time we've had Graham Potter, next year will be another step up, and we'll look to actually do as well as a lot of people predicted at the beginning of the season, but next season.
Yeah, big win. I mean, all the opposite stuff you've just said could be applied for Newcastle, and certainly I'm sure Newcastle fans are sort of looking at their situation quite pessimistically. The one thing I did want to ask you, because I know obviously Dan Burn's been injured recently, and development's had to play centre back, and obviously Pascal Gross, he's a great player. He's not a right wing back by any means. That's not his role per se. But I guess, and then Jakub Moder was playing yesterday, and that's a name I remember yesterday you asked me about him, and I said I have no idea who he is. I've never seen him play. So that's finding these players who are able to sort of adapt and readjust roles. That's an encouraging sign for sure, wouldn't it?
Yeah, although it's not really been spoken about too much, we have a weird number of injuries. We have Tariq Lamptey out, we have Solly March out, and two of the players that have made a massive impact, especially at the beginning of the season. And the fact that we had to play, it looked at the beginning, we had Moder subbed on in the previous game because there was an injury, but in this game, it appeared we played 3 at the back and had 5 in the midfield, with Moder playing a really out wide right role, which essentially probably won us the game. It was playing so wide that Newcastle, we were able to cut in and score, which is exactly how 2 goals were scored. Both Welbeck and Trossard were on pulling on the left and then just cut in and took a shot from just outside the box, and exactly the same way done the keeper twice. And that just shows exactly where the weakness was for Newcastle in that game. But Moder definitely put in a good stint. And I think someone on his PR team put out a quote, and it was essentially most forwards would have seen that they were called up to play right back and been really pessimistic about it. But Moder was like, I've got a chance to play and I've got a chance to show myself. And he took that on the chin and did a really good job. And I think a lot of Brighton fans will be very thankful for his optimism and his attitude actually going into playing in a different position that you'd expect.
Yeah, and a final question on this Brighton segment of the show. Going forward, you guys, let me get the table up. You guys are on 32 points, 6 away from Fulham, who are in 18th, 4 cleared Newcastle now. Is there sort of a target now of how many points or how many wins you guys think you'll need to ensure survival, like 100%? Is there, as you sort of alluded to, the run in, there are some tricky games. Chelsea, United come to mind, Man City as well. So I guess how many wins are you sort of looking for out of the next few ones to, hope that Brighton get in the Premier League next year?
Well, I think what Brighton will be thinking about is doing what Brighton do best, and it pull out draws as well as they can do. We always put up a really good fight against bigger teams and always feel hard done by. So I think I always go to big teams and feel surprisingly optimistic for a team so far down the table. But we get, like, even the next few games, we got Man U, Everton, Chelsea, and then we've got a game against Sheffield United. So we just need to make sure we can pick points up where they're available. We'll look to pick up 3 points against Sheffield United and hope to maybe get something against Leeds. But there are a lot of difficult games, but Brighton draw better than any other team. And that's kind of shown in the table that we've got 11 draws, and around us, nobody has anywhere near that. But I think Brighton are not going to be complacent. Potter will look to the next game and be like, we need points, and we'll take them as wherever we can get them.
Yeah. So we will look. I mean, this will go a long way for Brighton. Obviously, there's been a lot about the XG and how much Brighton should score compared to what they do score. But 3-0, big results, and as you said, definitely. Obviously some tough games, but also some winnable games coming up, and that should hopefully get you guys over the line. We'll bring back, you know what? I'm going to take you off screen just momentarily. Let's bring on the two United fans. We'll bring on Dan and Ben for this sort of segment. We'll go through, and I'm going to load up the Leicester United lineups. I think the first one I've got up is, we've got the United lineup. Here we go. So just bear with me 1 second. I am just going to share my screen so that people at home can see this. There we go. How does this work? Can everyone can see it, right? So let's have a look. So here's the lineup for people who are watching this show. Annoyingly, I don't like it when they do shirt numbers. I like it when it's a lineup, not shirt number thing.
Yeah.
But from what I'm going to, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to say it's Henderson goal, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire, and Telesh as the back four. I guess, is it a holding two of Matic and Fred? I'm going to guess as a pivot, and then sort of if it's 4-2-3-1, then 4-2-3-1 or whatever, then I guess Greenwood, Van de Beek, and Pogba sort of as an advanced three.
I'm still trying to figure it out myself, to be honest. Maybe
this is a bit...
Pogba on the left, Van de Beek under 10, Greenwood up front, and then, or maybe Martial up front and Greenwood on the right. That's what I'd say he's gone with. But it's a weird looking lineup, because obviously Bruno isn't there. Which Bruno was one of the three consistents, as Ben said earlier on. You had Bruno, Maguire, and Wan-Bissaka. So Bruno's on the bench. But yeah, it's an odd lineup. I'm guessing we're going to go 4-2-3-1, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, as you guys have said, Bruno, as you've alluded to, Dan, Bruno's on the bench. Obviously, some key players. Luke Shaw is on the bench as well. Scott McTominay, who has been, I guess, regular of late, is also on the bench. And I guess, Edison Cavani is sort of recovered from injury enough to be on the bench, not from the starting lineup. Ben, what are your thoughts? I mean, to me, it suggests that United are going out to win this, albeit not putting out all of their weapons, but clearly enough that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer feels will get past Leicester.
Yeah, I think he had to rest some players. I think, he doesn't like rotating, but I think that it's going to come a point when Bruno Fernandes probably had to be on the bench. The biggest thing I take from that is I don't think Rashford is involved at all. And considering he played the first half and then came off at half time, and in that first half, he didn't make a single run. He was just passing. It doesn't look good for Marcus Rashford. I think he is rumoured to need an operation, but he's probably going to wait till after the Euros. So I think it's maybe just managing that injury there. So that might be a little bit of a worry. I think, you're right. I think it's most likely a 4-2-3-1. It could be a diamond. However, knowing how we played with a diamond in midfield earlier on in the season, it didn't actually go too well. So I think most likely a 4-2-3-1, because Pogba has played on that left. Obviously, midweek he played on that left and was effective. And I remember when he played Liverpool earlier on in this season, he was very good on the left-hand side. So I think, it's an interesting lineup. I'm happy to see players rested. Wan-Bissaka has been looking a bit tired, so I hope it's okay to him. But good to see Donny van de Beek starting. I hope it's a chance for Donny van de Beek to really feel like he has the manager's confidence. Apparently Frank de Boer spoke out and said that he is happy, so I really hope he has a good game for him. And good to see Henderson as well. I think you want Henderson to carry on his good run. I think if Solskjaer's going to sort of play them out as equal number ones, then you've got to be fair. And Henderson's been consistent while David De Gea's been away. So I think unless he makes a mistake, keep him in there.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was going to ask, but you sort of answered it there. I guess De Gea obviously back in the team, but not enough to go straight into the starting lineup. Dean Henderson, I guess, has earned that spot. So you've answered that question there. The one I did was going to ask, because I know Dan James of late has been getting a bit of stick from United fans. Just, I guess, lack of end product has always been the thing with him. I mean, contrast that with Mason Greenwood, who has also not had the season, I guess, all United fans expected him to. He hasn't really kicked on per se, but this is sort of an indicator that Greenwood's sort of ahead of Dan James in the pecking order. Dan, would I be right in saying that?
I don't think anyone doubts Greenwood's ability to become a world-class striker. I think lots of people, myself included, doubt Dan James's ability to become even a very good winger. You might become a good mid-table Premier League winger. I'd say he is that right now, but can he kick on from there? No, I don't think he can. I don't think it's that he's playing badly. I think that's just what he has to offer, and that's it. I don't think he has anything else to offer in terms of his future. Whereas Greenwood, I'd say, he will be a world-class striker. I can't remember having so much confidence in a player becoming world-class as I have in Greenwood becoming world-class.
Yeah, and the final thing I want to ask Ben is obviously Diallo on the bench. We talked about how he had an impact again in the game against Milan. Should we? I mean, there's an argument to say you could have played him today and seen what he was capable of against Leicester, but off the bench he could also have a pretty lively cameo as well.
Yeah, no, I think I expect him to come on. I thought he'd have maybe a slightly more game time than what he's got so far. But I get that with him as well, obviously he is only 18, and as well he has a lot of sort of physical work to take on in the gym, and also understanding the way that the English style of the game. So I think the one thing I trust with Solskjaer Fulham is his man management. And I think he's proven time and time again that he's done amazing things for the young players at Manchester United. So if Solskjaer doesn't think he's ready to start, then I completely trust that that's the right decision. And I think he'll manage that well.
Well, I'm going to bring Luke James on as well, just so we can have a look at the Leicester team together. Here it is. There we go. And I mean, their graphic is slightly better. I don't like the moving graphic, but at least it's sort of positionally in place. But Schmeichel in goal, it looks like a back three. That's an interesting one. I don't think I've seen Leicester with the back three of late. And maybe Luke, I'll ask you in just a sec if that's a surprise to you as well. But Johnny Evans, Soyuncu, and Fofana is the back three, with Albrighton on the right, Ndidi and Tielemans as the sort of centre midfielders, and Castagna on the left, and then a front three of Jose Perez, Kelechi Iheanacho, and Jamie Vardy. Very strong team on the outset. Yeah, Luke, back three for Leicester. I mean, we know they've got some good centre backs, and so they've decided to play all three of them in this one. Seems like Brendan Rodgers has maybe tailored his plan a bit towards Man United and sort of fighting off that pace that they have as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure a back three against United is entirely necessary, to be completely honest. I kind of said that earlier with West Ham. I think Leicester have enough talent kind of at the top end of the pitch to cause United issues today. I like Leicester's team a lot. I think they are legitimately one of the best teams in the league. I think they completely deserve to be where they are in the top four at the minute. I think kind of the midfield battle is going to be really interesting. I think Ndidi is just a brilliant player, and I think Tielemans is kind of incredibly underrated, kind of outside of the football manager community, who have been kind of singing his praises for the past decade, seemingly. Leicester, great team. It should be a really interesting game today. I think the question over Leicester is whether Vardy can score again, because he's kind of been out of the goals recently. So yeah, the question will be, if Leicester can find the goals, who's going to score them? Iheanacho has been in a wonderful run of form recently. I really like Perez playing as that kind of number 10 as well. So yeah, there's definitely lots of things to like about Leicester. This is a decent lineup and one that can definitely take the game to United.
Yeah, and so I'll start with I'll ask Ben, then I'll ask Dan. Ben, does anything jump out to you about this Leicester team? Does anything? Well, I mean, yeah, as a United fan, does anything jump out at you?
I guess my biggest worry is with the pace of sort of Vardy and Iheanacho running those channels against Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof. I think that's the most worrying thing. Obviously, Harry Maguire not blessed with pace. Sometimes Lindelof has an excellent game, and other times he looks really, really bad. So I think definitely running those channels. There's also been a lot of problems with Wan-Bissaka actually not being in line with the defenders. So I think hoping that he is in line there, because we've actually conceded quite a few goals because he's kept someone on side. I also think as well, Tellez is starting instead of Shaw, and I think that's good to rest Luke Shaw. And I like Tellez when he's played well. However, again, he's just not played much. So I don't know if, again, that channel between centre back and full back might be something that Leicester may exploit by playing both Vardy and Iheanacho. So I think that's definitely what Leicester will probably look at. It's definitely what I'd look at if I was facing Manchester United. But hopefully Manchester United are aware of that and have worked on that in training, because otherwise, as we know, Leicester can get joy in terms of getting in behind any team in the Premier League.
Yeah, Dan, there's any concerns, or there's similar concerns that Ben has with regards to defense, because, and I guess no one can really, if Man United beat this Leicester team, it'll be honestly it'll be beating a full strength Leicester team. So it'll be very well earned. And it's an exciting game. It does look like an exciting game.
It is an exciting game, because I'm looking at our Leicester team now, and there are so many players that I just have in that United team. I'd have definitely Fofana, then Soyuncu, maybe Evans, just to have him around the squad. I mean, I know obviously he came through the United ranks. Ndidi, Tielemans, and then Vardy. And even, I know Harvey Barnes isn't playing, but he's a great player, I think. It's a very strong team. And I feel like people sometimes forget that Leicester are actually probably going to finish third this season in the Premier League. So it's by no means a foregone conclusion. And it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna run through. I'm gonna look through the bench. I know Maddison and Barnes is obviously a bit of a loss, but oh goodness. Okay, I'm gonna find it in a bit. But let's get predictions, and let's get some predictions out the way. Luke, what are you sort of looking for in terms of a scoreline? Who do you reckon will get through?
I think Leicester 2-1.
Okay, fair enough. Ben?
I'm going to be positive. I'm going to say Man United 2-1. I think Bruno Fernandes off the bench could help.
Okay, so that's certainly a factor late on. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, I'm looking at the bench. Obviously, some interesting names. I would say, I guess, United probably have the stronger bench. So that's an interesting one. I'm not going to list all the names. People can go find that and Google it. But certainly, United have a stronger bench for sure. Dan, any thoughts on the scoreline?
I'm going to go with 1-0. I think it's going to be one of those typical games where we just about managed to grind it out.
Fair enough. Joe, you've sort of heard all the conversation. What are your thoughts on this game and then prediction?
Honestly, I'll just give you a prediction. Manchester United to go through 2-1, extra time required.
Okay. Well, that wouldn't be ideal, extra time, I imagine, especially for a United team that have played pretty much twice a week, pretty much. So, yeah, that wouldn't be ideal. But let's go. We've obviously this is obviously the final of the quarterfinals. We've had Bournemouth go out to Southampton 3-0 in that sort of South Coast-ish derby. Man City obviously just rolled past Everton 2-0. And Chelsea just a few hours ago beat Sheffield United 2-0. I guess all expected results. Ben, Dan, I'll start with you. Does of Southampton, City, Chelsea, they're three quite solid semi-finalists that,
Yeah, Southampton, nah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I think City on paper are the strongest team. Whether they're that motivated to win it, it is the FA Cup, so in times gone by they probably would have cared about it more. But on paper, City are by far the strongest team, and yeah, there's a lot of strong teams left in there apart from Southampton, who Ralph Hasenhüttl is the most overrated manager ever. No, not ever, but this year. But yeah, I think it'll have to be definitely one of City, Chelsea, and United to win it, I reckon.
Yeah, Ben, same question. Is any of these teams is there any team you'd particularly want to avoid in the semis, or is it at this stage, semi-finals, you still have to beat the best teams to win the competition?
Yeah, I think definitely, obviously, Manchester City. I watched the Everton game as well. It was the way they beat Everton. It was 0-0 for most of the game, but they were still just in control the whole time. They were so patient, and they ended up winning the game 2-0. So I think, they look really good. Obviously, things with Man City and also Chelsea, I actually think Chelsea, and I've said this a lot, have a lot better squad depth than Manchester United. And I think they probably have a better team on paper than Manchester United. So in that sense, I think Chelsea and Man City are probably more equipped to win the FA Cup. So pretty much, I'd just take Southampton because they're very fragile and obviously got a lot of injuries. So I think, it's definitely going to be Chelsea and Man City are going to be front running for this competition, especially if one of them have a Champions League exit as well. They'll want to win something. So.
Yeah, and actually, just before because I was going to ask Luke who he thought, I guess, would win the FA Cup, but just quickly, Dan, Ben, given the choice between an FA Cup potential win and a Europa League potential win, is there one that should be the priority, Dan?
They're both second-rate competitions at the moment, but I'd say Europa League just because it's more exotic, I suppose.
Ben, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say I'd take whatever one wouldn't impact us coming second as well. I think a second and a trophy is the target for Manchester United.
Fair enough. Luke, obviously, West Ham obviously not in the FA Cup anymore, but obviously, this could have implications down the line with the Premier League. Obviously, if you manage to hold on to defeat Arsenal, and by the way, it is 3-2 Arsenal, another own goal for West Ham. This could have, if a run for, Chelsea obviously have a semi-final to play. They're obviously in the Champions League. Those games could stack on. Man United, I think, a bit out of sight in this one. So that's the reason why I'm focusing on Chelsea here. But any thoughts on the FA Cup with these three teams left, and the winner of, and going off your pick, you're picking Leicester. Any thoughts on who might emerge as the winner from there?
I think City should win. I have a sneaking suspicion that Chelsea might. I think City rather. This isn't their main priority. So I could see potentially Chelsea getting an upset kind of later along the line. But I think Chelsea and City are the two teams that really do stand out for me. I think the reason why this is interesting, kind of removing fixture congestion from it, is if a team that wins this kind of has already secured European football, then the spot is kind of passed along down the league. So as a West Ham fan, then that's kind of where our element of interest in this comes from. I essentially just don't want Southampton to win the FA Cup. But I think it's a really strong group of teams. Southampton have nothing to lose because they've had such a bad run of form recently because of injuries. So this is a big opportunity for them to kind of shift the focus elsewhere. I think they are by far the weakest team and the form book shows that. So for me, City or Chelsea are the two that I expect to go kind of all the way if it is one of those two.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming the FA Cup semi-final draws after the Leicester United game, so we'll find out who gets to play who. But you talk about second place in a trophy, mid-table and a trophy for Southampton would certainly add some gloss to their season. So should be interesting there. I guess we've sort of rattled through. We'll finish off with looking at the England squad. And it's a shame Carl's not on because I did want to ask him about Lewis Dunk being potentially snubbed, but let's see. I will get that up for people. Right, there we go. All the names all fit there. Let's start with we'll start with Ben. Does anything particularly surprise you? I know it's interesting because we've talked about how England's had a lot of like 7 right backs and no left backs seemingly in the England setup. Now that Luke Shaw and Ben Chilwell there's obviously a bit of there's quality at that position now, and as a United fan, Luke Shaw getting in that must be a pretty great feeling. Yeah,
I think Luke Shaw had to be in there. I think it would have been criminal to leave him out. He's by far been, I think, the best English left back. I actually thought Cresswell should be in there. I thought he's done really well. He's certainly done a little bit more than Chilwell. But I think Luke Shaw definitely deserved a call up. I think the most surprising thing for me was not seeing Trent Alexander-Arnold in there, because I always just kind of assumed he'd get in. But then if you think about it more, then I think it does maybe make sense with sort of his form and Liverpool's form. But 100% real positive for Luke Shaw. Hopefully he's going to take his chance because I think the way he's played for Manchester United this season, he'd be such an asset for England come the Euros.
Yeah, and Dan, similarly for Dean Henderson, with no Jordan Pickford injured, obviously, and missing these games, there's a potential chance an audition tape for him to, I guess, put himself in the reckoning to be England's number one.
I mean, I think if Dean Henderson was to play regularly for Man United, I don't think anyone would question that he would be England's number one. But the question is, will he be Man United's number one? You can't be England's number one without playing regular games as a goalkeeper. We'll probably see next game. I mean, the game coming up is FA Cup, against Leicester. So I always assumed Dean Henderson would play. But will he play in the next Premier League game? That's going to be an interesting question. And if he does, I don't think he can be England's number one. Maybe he'll be on the plane to the Euros, but he certainly won't be England's number one.
Yeah. That's an interesting sort of storyline to see. Obviously, Nick Pope has been in the most England squads of the three goalkeepers, so one would expect him to be the incumbent favourite, but we'll see. The other names that stick out, Luke, I know Gareth Southgate talked about it. There was a debate between Ollie Watkins and Patrick Bamford. Watkins has got the nod this time round. Any thoughts on that sort of, that dilemma? And was Watkins the right person to put through?
I've not given it a great deal of thought, to be completely honest. I don't have the stats to hand. I personally would have gone with Patrick Bamford. I think he's been more effective. I think he has more to offer in an England team. He is a utility player. I think he can contribute in different ways. Not to take away from Ollie Watkins, I think he's a great player as well. But I would have Bamford at kind of higher in the depth chart for England strikers. I think the one that really confuses me about this England squad is why they've made an example out of Trent Alexander-Arnold. I just don't understand it, because this is 26 players that he's taken on this. And of course, it's normally, I think, 23, 21. Alexander-Arnold is obviously going to be the future in the England team. He's going to be in there for many, many years to come. He's not been good, but he's not been that bad. And I just find it odd that when you're given these extra players that you would choose to drop someone who is kind of clearly lacking in confidence. I just think kind of there was no need to kick the guy while he was already down. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the England squad as a whole.
I will ask you then, because you've obviously seen Jesse Lingard for West Ham at first hand. This was sort of richly deserved on his recent form that he's back in the England team?
Yeah, richly deserved. But again, the question that springs to my mind, and the reason why I think including Jesse Lingard was a little bit weird, is because Gareth Southgate has a natural aversion to number 10s anyway. So if we're calling up players who don't typically fit his system anyway, rather than having a player who would ordinarily be in the squad kind of 24/7 for the next 10 years, I just find it a really weird way of going about it. In terms of Jesse Lingard's form, he completely kind of deserves to be there. He's been fantastic since joining West Ham, and you can't take that away from him. But kind of ordinarily, is he going to take Jesse Lingard to the Euros? Absolutely not. He's just not going to be in that conversation for me, especially if other players are fit, and also just simply because he doesn't really fit the requirements of Gareth Southgate's system. So yeah, I was really surprised by that. Deserved, probably not the most deserved West Ham player, I'd say, given kind of the length of time that it's been playing. But again, yeah, that's kind of as a whole for me.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they do have a prior relationship, so maybe it is sort of based a little bit on that. Joe, just generally, what are your thoughts? Because, I mean, this squad seems to reward those who have been in form recently. I know to an extent Alexander-Arnold's not been in terrible form, but I guess he's sort of seen, his form has sort of been seen as inferior compared to the other options in there. What are your thoughts on the squad?
It feels to me like a very rotated, form-heavy side, and I've been wondering why the hell Gareth Southgate decided to go down this route. Then I saw who the first team England are going to be facing: San Marino at home. A lot of these players making near to international debuts are going to have an absolute field day. Prediction, as per usual, is just how many goals will England put past them. The right back thing is particularly interesting. I think it was Borsport, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, that put up the poll. Was it right to drop Trent Alexander-Arnold? Yes, no, not sure. I answered not sure. I honestly don't know if this is the right decision by Gareth Southgate in a European Championship year where you're going away to Albania and hosting Poland, who are far from slouches. I think it's important to credit some of the right backs who have been in form. One man that isn't on this list, obviously, because he's injured, is Tariq Lamptey, who on form definitely has been outperforming Trent Alexander-Arnold and Aaron Wan-Bissaka recently. But again, it's just me being naturally conservative about this. I don't like over rotations of players in squads in a championship year. I think a lot of these particularly bizarre choices have been because it's a 26-man squad, not a 23. But yeah, the whole right back situation is incredibly odd. And up front, I mean, I know I've just said they're difficult games, but is Harry Kane nailed on for this set of international fixtures? If the choice is between Ollie Watkins and Patrick Bamford, and you're rotating the team so heavily, why not give Kane a little rest, especially considering how hot and cold he's been blowing for Tottenham recently?
Well, he'll be chasing the goals record for England, wouldn't it? I'm sure players are looking at the San Marino game going, yeah, we can add to our goal tally for England.
Now you mention it, yeah, he is definitely eyeing up that hosting San Marino.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah, it's like when, players at the end of the season just want to win that Premier League Golden Boot and just sort of dubious goals panel will just claim anything that they sort of have a touch on at least or something like that. Yeah, it's interesting points. Obviously, Jude Bellingham's an interesting pick just because I don't think he'll be able to go to England. I'm pretty sure Dortmund have made it clear they won't let him go. So maybe a replacement could be called up. Obviously, Jack Grealish is nursing an injury at the moment. You would imagine he would be in, perhaps as the substitute in for Jesse Lingard. Eric Dyer continues to be picked, which confuses me. Joe, having watched, I don't know how. I assume he played against Zagreb. That one's always a bit of a. There's always one selection that is completely left field, and that appears to be that one.
Yeah, I'll go against what I just said, rewarding players on form. It's a shame that Carl isn't here. The Lewis Dunk snub, in lieu of Eric Dyer, who for me is not a centre back and pretty well proved it against Dinamo Zagreb. That's the pick in here that goes against all of the others, if that makes sense. It feels like a lot of these players have been picked on form. I don't see an argument for Eric Dyer to be in this team.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what he'll learn from Eric Dyer against San Marino, or there's the opposition we mentioned. I don't really know what England will learn, to be honest. But Ben, is there a player who you'd like to see an England shirt over these next two friendlies, just to see how they do, and give them a chance to sort of put their name forward before the inevitable Euro squad deadline? Is there a player here who you're looking forward to see?
Other than Luke Shaw, I'm looking forward to see Mason Mount. I think he will be in that Euro squad, but I think I've been enjoying him. I think he's the midfielder who maybe gives a little bit of something different. I think he can play in multiple positions as well, so it'd be interesting to see where he's kind of deployed. And Bukayo Saka as well. I don't think we've seen too much of him, so I kind of want to see him more in the England shirt. Other than that, it's just kind of really the same names. Interesting that Marcus Rashford's in there though, and obviously he's not involved today for Manchester United. As a United fan, again, and we've, like Joe said, there's been such a heavy rotation with this squad. If he has got a little bit of an injury, then why is he in there? I don't know if he'll continue to be in there, but I just can't see if he plays one half against AC Milan and fails to run forward and just passes it the whole time, then I don't think he should really go to England, because I think without question he'll be in the Euro squad, so there's no need to go now. But yeah, other than that, probably really Bukayo Saka's who I'm looking at just for more minutes, really.
Yeah, actually, and Dan, I did want to ask you, it's interesting how I guess a lot of attacking options have emerged since the 2018 World Cup. And obviously, we've seen Conor Cody, Tyrone Mings get chances at the back. And yet, because, John Stones obviously has played exceptionally and so deserves to be in the team. But it does feel weird that we're going back to 2018 with John Stones and Maguire and perhaps Eric Dyer or Kyle Walker as that third centre-back.
Jesse Lingard was playing there. It's weird.
It's a bit of a throwback.
At least Gary Cahill isn't coming back. But no, certainly there's been sort of like an upturn in form for players who had lost form. You've obviously lost players like Dele Alli, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think this England team needed some experience. You look at the names there, even if they're not that young, such as Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is youngish. He's 24, 25, that sort of range, I'd say. The youngest he is 23. So he's youngish, but he's not that experienced in an England shirt. But yeah, so it's good to get some nice experience, even though Jesse Lingard kind of is like, he looks about 10, he's 27 or 28. Yeah, it's good to get some players who've already had a few caps under the belt back in the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm not going to ask for predictions for this game because that we expect them to walk through. I am going to try to look for the under-21 squad though, because the Euro under-21 squad's been picked, and I do want to just grab everyone's quick reaction. I know, so I am just sort of scurrily. I am trying to find that. Oh no, I have found it. Okay, here we go. Just bear with me 1 second. We'll end on this. Let me just get through all this, and boom, there we go. So here's the England under-21 squad. I mean, the under-21 Euros start, I think, next week. So the group stage starts next week. So I don't know if it means these players are going to be taken away from the Premier League. That I'm not too sure. But looking at it, I mean, does any names come to mind? I'll start with Luke. Does any names sort of come to mind and who you're excited to see get some game time at this tournament?
To be honest, my biggest takeaway from the England under-21 team is why is Aidan Boyford still the manager? He's just done an abysmal job with the under-21s as a whole. In terms of players that I'd quite look forward to see play, Ben Godfrey is really good centre-back. I think he's great. Max Aarons, again, is another really good option. Mason Greenwood up the other end of the pitch as well. There's lots of opportunities here for players to make a mark. And it is a really strong England team. The question for me is how it all fits together under a manager who has time and time again not particularly delivered the goods. The other player who I think has a really bright future is Dwight McNeil. Whether or not he's in the team, I doubt he'll be in the starting 11 for this. But no, he's definitely a talent as well who should get more minutes and more recognition in the Premier League, because he's someone who has shown that he can play both ways. He can play kind of as that traditional kind of midfielder role rather than just an out-and-out winger. So yeah, he's someone that I like quite a lot because he's got the potential to be very versatile.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly give people, I mean, because I know this tournament's kind of snuck up on people. So England have been drawn with the Swiss under-21s, the Portuguese under-21s, and Croatia. Their first game's on Thursday at 3 o'clock UK time against Switzerland, and then presumably the other two in sort of this group stage. And I think then the knockout stage is held a few months later, which is, yeah, I mean, it's COVID. It's a tournament during COVID, essentially. Dan, a few Premier League names of note. And I mean, obviously, from a United's fan point of view, obviously Mason Greenwood's the one that I guess will be missing for a few weeks, a couple games at least. But, of the sort of forwards there, I would dare say he's probably the most in form, along with Hudson-Odoi. It does seem like a team where he could stamp his quality on.
I mean, Mason Greenwood against West Ham was excellent. He was absolutely brilliant. He hit the post twice, and although he didn't actually manage to get a goal in the end, we sort of saw, the form he showed towards the back end of last year in Project Restart, let's call it. But yeah, I'd say he is, just looking at the squad, it's an incredibly strong squad. The quality in that squad, I'm not sure you're going to see in any other under-21 team from around the world. You've got Ben Godfrey, Max Aarons, who was linked with Barcelona last year, and Mason Greenwood, Cam Hudson-Odoi, who's constantly been linked with Bayern Munich. Just so much talent in that team. And if the manager can't do anything with it, then I think he needs to go, because that team is just ridiculously stacked.
I will say the French team is, and I'll get that up because that one is just mind-boggling that they're all under 21s. That one is, I'll get that up in just a bit. And for those who don't know, one of the forwards, Noni Madueke, I should give him a shout out. He's been playing at PSV Eindhoven in the Dutch league and has got 7 goals and 6 assists for their first team. So he has certainly merited the call up, just given his form overseas. Ben, any particular player you're interested in looking at in this squad that could have a decent, enhance the reputation?
I'm a big fan of Ben Godfrey because I think he's actually different to a lot of the first team, like senior England centre backs. And I think he's good because he can play anywhere across the back line and even CDM. He looks like he has sort of everything. Kind of he's physical. He's really good on the ball. He's good at running. So I think, if Ben Godfrey, I think he could definitely make that step up in the future because I think he's got everything to be a top centre back for England.
Have I asked you this question twice?
I think I've I did get deja vu there.
Because I did. I was hearing it and I went, wait, I'm pretty sure I've asked him twice. Okay, well this is I don't know. I think I'm gonna call it in a sec. I did want to get the France one up though because that one is mad. But so here it is. That's the French one. I don't know if people can see it, but Awaz in it, Kamavinga, Kamara, Sumer. I mean, the midfield is unbelievable. The attack is, and the defense. I mean, this is Joe. You're looking at this. France are ridiculously stacked.
I always look forward to these kind of competitions because I follow a couple of other countries, and I have not seen the French squad before now, and I am terrified at the prospect of facing them at any point. Benoit Badiashile in particular, just wow. Hussam Aouar is in that. Yeah, there's nothing else I can say. In a minute or so, I'd like to comment on the England team if that's okay. But yeah, that French team is absolutely absurd.
Go for it. Do you want me to get the team up again? Or?
Yeah, please. Please do. It's not really a comment on the players. I was following the last under 21 European Championships a few years ago because I had an interest in how stacked the Italian team was. And going into it, it was roughly the same time that the first Nations League finals were held. England, of course, facing the Netherlands and then Switzerland in the losing playoff. The amount of hype going into that under 21 tournament in the Raw Sports studio was absolutely insane. People saying that England had by far the best team there. The only explanation I have for them saying that is that they had no idea who was on the other teams. England at that last tournament, I said as a contrarian that they would go out in the group stage. They went out in the group stage without winning a single game. Romania, Ionut Radu in goal, single-handedly closed down that team. And this was an England side that had the likes of Aaron Wan-Bissaka in it, who again had a dreadful under-21 tournament. I thought in the wake of this tournament, I was somewhat ignorant of the England setup, that whoever had been the manager of this catastrophe had been sacked. It was Adi Boothroyd. He's still in this job. I've got absolutely no idea how. If any, it's like what Luke says. It doesn't matter how stacked it is on paper. And honestly, I think a lot of the under-21 sides are better than this. I mean, going into the last tournament, I thought England had at best the 7th or 8th best squad. Going into this one, I don't see them as a huge amount higher. To be honest, I actually thought the last squad on paper was better. And if Adi Boothroyd repeats what happened a couple of years ago, we could just be about to see another massive disappointment from an England youth side. I know I'm being contrarian about this, but for as long as he is in that job, I have got no faith in the England under-21 side.
I will say with that French team, I mean, we've heard a lot about William Saliba. On name, he would get in a lot of the international teams. He doesn't get into this French under-21 team. There's so many players they've left out. So I venture to put forward that France are probably the favorite to win the whole tournament. But anyway, that will do it for us. Thank you, Dan Rauf, obviously, for coming back and giving up some of your time. Thank you, Luke James, Ben Parkinson, Joe Spagnoli. We will probably not do another Quaran-Stream until term 3, unless something earth-shattering happens that demands an instant reaction. I dare say, but probably not, obviously. But the F1 thing's coming sometime next week ahead of the Grand Prix. So check out that. And we will be back in term 3. So thank you so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your weekend.